Hey everyone, I'm Zenith Priest, and welcome to my introduction for Devouring Teeth Lurk Underfoot, where I'll give you insight into the nature of the spirit and show you how to drive off the invaders by turn 5. Devouring Teeth is a low complexity offensive spirit with a small dose of the other traits. We start with a single presence in the middle of our board, allowing us easy access to most of the action. Our playstyle suggests lurking underneath the invaders, considering most of our powers have range 0, and highlights a lack of card plays and a penchant for higher damage output. Territorial aggression is part of that reason, adding an extra damage to each damage dealing power. Each of our growth options allow us to place a presence, with a range depending on which one we choose. Reclaiming limits us to where we have presence, gaining a power gives us close range, and a surge of energy lets us place presence a little farther. For this strategy, we're going to focus more on gaining powers to delay reclaiming as long as possible. Our growth tracks are definitely imbalanced, providing a higher energy output, but having to devote a number of turns before reaching even 3 card plays. Still, 2 card plays is enough to work with, and the added elements makes it easier to hit higher tiers of our innate power, making this a good progression to explore for our introduction to the spirit. Our innate power is Death Approaches from Beneath the Surface, which allows us to move into a land occupied by invaders and wreak some havoc. Note that we only move presence if we aren't already there, so we can't form sacred sites this way. For our unique powers, Gift of Furious Might grants a huge damage bonus to one of target spirit's damage powers. When playing with allies, be sure to let them know when you're playing this, or be willing to change plans slightly if they request it. For solo play, targeting ourselves lets us be more direct with the extra damage. Mark territory with scars and teeth provides high defense to a land and causes fear if invaders are present. Dahan know better than to stay in land marked by you though, so you're not going to be able to set up effective counterattacks with this power. Still, it ensures that land stays safe, and the invaders should be anticipating a more direct counterattack from you in the future. Sometimes you'll be able to push those Dahan into a place where they can handle an upcoming ravage, either by putting 3 Dahan into a land, or 2 Dahan into a newly explored land about to build. Hurt towards the lurking maw causes fear and lets you gather a non-city invader into one of your lands, stopping a build or mitigating a ravage. Note that the wording of this power means gathering is optional, so if you find yourself with nowhere good to gather, you can still get the elements and a fear. Your Ferocious Rampage also causes a fear and deals 3 damage to non-city invaders. Really, it's 4 damage because of our territorial aggression, which is enough to clear out a couple towns or a slightly established land that explores again. Consider that all your powers require you to be present in a land you target in some way. Even your innate power will move your presence to be in that land if you're not already. As such, consider your presence placements carefully, because you can easily end up out of range. And with that, let's get started on a demo game. As a low complexity spirit, I'll be using the progression deck for powers and disabling expansions to simplify our decisions during play. Alright, let's begin. Turn 1. The invaders have explored into the jungles. Marked territory can defend the lower jungle as long as we're there, so we can just focus on the other one. We start with enough energy to play any of our powers, and because no 2 of our powers will give us enough elements to do damage with our innate, we can stick to just a single card from now. Since we have enough energy, let's gain a new power. Devouring Ants takes up the fear count and deals a little damage, more if the target is jungles or sands. We'll need a sacred site, and it does destroy a Dahan, but is still a good option to consider. Without the progression deck, damage powers are best. The animal element should be prioritized if you're trying to reach the highest tier of death approaches, but that's more of a late game consideration. As you gain powers, a healthy mix of fire and animals should be fine, with the occasional earth for good measure. For our initial presence placement, consider which powers you'll be using. You could opt for Devouring Ants, and it may even be the better play, considering it would clear land 6. However, I'm more focused on highlighting the unique powers of Devouring Teeth, and so we're going to start a little slower with her towards the lurking maw. Since that'll let us gather the town that's going to build, we want to place our presence from the energy track into the lower sands, giving us the option to gather the town to the land that doesn't explore at the end of this turn. Ideally, we'd want to gather into a land type that doesn't already have a building, on the chance that if it explores later, we may end up with cities we can't deal with right away. With the sands exploring, we'll gather the jungle town into land 5 before moving to the lower jungles. Turn 2. We're already in the jungle we want to defend, so we only need to make sure we can get to the higher sands. We could rely on our innate power during the slow phase, but let's just place a presence there now, this time from the plays track. We have enough energy to play the cards we want, so let's grab another power. Gnawing Root Biters lets us push 2 towns in the slow phase and provides animals and earth. Without the progression deck, a cheap power that controls towns and has our elements can certainly be useful to help corral stragglers into a more central location. I'd still keep an eye out for damage powers, but as we hit a point where we can reach higher tiers of our innate power, it's not as strict a priority. Our plays this time will be our Gift and Mark territory. This also lets us do damage with our innate power, so we'll be sure to make use of our ferocious might. Defending the jungle with Mark territory lets us push a third Dahan into land 1, so we shouldn't have to worry about it later. Our jungles are safe from the ravages, the invaders build in the sands, then they explore further into the wetlands. Our main concern is the sands that built a new city, so let's take care of that before proceeding, earning a fear card for taking out the buildings. Turn 3. There's not much we can do about the lower sands before it blights, but we can play all of our damage powers for a really aggressive turn. To do so, we'll need the energy from the last growth option. We'll also need to have a sacred site for devouring ants, so let's grab presents from our plays track to make one in our mountains, giving us options during the slow phase. With our ferocious rampage dealing 4 damage to non-cities, devouring ants dealing 3 damage in a sand or jungle, and our innate power dealing another 2 damage, we should be able to make the invaders feel quite unwelcome. With no fast powers, we reveal our fear card, Belief Takes Root, adding defense in our lands. The lower sands will still blight before the invaders build in the wetlands and venture back out into the sands. For the slow phase, there are a number of options for us to consider. Our threats are wetlands and sands, so let's use that to direct us. Land 1 will clear itself during the ravage, leaving lands 3, 4, and 7. Since we're not in lands 3 and 4, we'll need to use powers that can reach. That means devouring ants are sent to the lower sands, leaving a single explorer, and earning a second fear card. Death approaches from beneath the higher wetlands, keeping that land safe from the ravage. While it doesn't make full use of its potential, a ferocious rampage in land 7 leaves us with only 1 new town to handle next turn. Turn 4. Gnawing Root Biters will be able to handle that lower sands, which means we can gain another power before having to reclaim. Quicken the Earth's struggles, damage buildings, or provide some great defense. More importantly, it grants us the elements for a higher tier of our innate power. Without the progression deck, what you're looking for may differ depending on which power you have left and the specific board state you're in. I know that isn't very helpful, but there's just enough factors that it's hard to say what you should prioritize. The good news, though, is that because we don't need this new power to handle our threats, most picks will provide some value. Here, we already have our sacred site in a good spot for our new power, so let's place our presence from the plays again into the more established jungles. Playing what we have, we proceed. Quicken the Earth's struggles will clear our mountain, and then we reveal a fear card. Retreat will send the explorer in the blighted sands into the jungle before the invaders take their turn. Land 1 is cleared at the cost of a blight, triggering terror level 2 when the town is destroyed. With not enough damage on the other wetlands, and no one to build in the sands, the invaders explore back into the wetlands. On the slow phase, we don't need gnawing root biters anymore, but using our innate power to take out that city seems good. Turn 5. With no cards in hand, we reclaim. Depending on what we need, we can pull a presence from either track this time. The upper track will let us start picking up major powers, and the lower track will set us up for longer hands and the highest level of our innate power. Either way, complete the sacred site in our jungles, allowing us to finish the game with Quicken the Earth's struggles. Some final thoughts on Devouring Teeth Lurk Underfoot. Be careful about gathering buildings into the same terrain, but different lands. It may get you into trouble if you can't handle both cities. On the other hand, don't be afraid to let a city build if you know you've got enough damage to take care of it. Put that excessive damage to good use. Because we're gaining powers early and often, don't be afraid to change strategies based on your picks. I'm highlighting this spirit in a way that showcases its unique powers, not necessarily what the better play is. This game, for example, started with the Jungle Explorer, and our first pick was Devouring Ants, making it a strong option early on. By all means, feel free to change which powers you play to make use of strong picks. Finally, this strategy makes use of our Gift of Furious Might, which is only allowed as a solo player. If playing with allies, you'll have to target one of them instead, changing what some of these choices look like. Alright everyone, that's all I've got this time. Hope you gained some insight, and good luck in your next games.